Do you like best SEO tools roundups that are all the same? Then get the fuck off my board, because this post isn't garbage. While there are some good SEO and keyword research tools, like this website EAT calculator, there are also many secret tools that you didn't know could be used to find keywords. Assuming you know how to do keyword research, you can probably even use these to generate value. Number 1. Sitemaps. Using the following process, sitemaps can be used even by complete idiots to get a very solid idea of what keywords any particular site is targeting. As described previously in a more extensive thread, the general process here is to get a site's sitemap, fuck around with it until you have a list of plain URLs, which can be automated easily as described in the previously mentioned thread here. Then run the site through a tool like this one to generate a CSV with the extracted URLs, their title tags, and their meta descriptions. Then examine the data, and you can usually easily identify a fair number of the keywords associated with this site. For example, many sites will have title tags set up as, for example, brand name and then keyword separated by a pipe character, or something like buy this dash, it's the number one product that you can buy. You can then separate these easily into separate cells in a spreadsheet by using a function like Google Sheets' split or a comparable function in your spreadsheet application of your choosing. Additionally, since these keywords might not quite be in the right format, for example being how you can buy shoes instead of how to buy shoes, you can run these terms through something like Keyword Shitter to get variations that are more keywordy that can then be parsed down into a more cohesive list of terms where you actually know the search volume and which are the main real terms they're targeting. And you can do that with something like keywordvolume.io. You can also check out this video guide for competitor analysis here for more about general competitor analysis, or don't, I'm not your dad. Number 2, Google Sheets. Google Sheets basically spits in the face of God. Kind of like how the company known as Google basically spits in the face of anyone who supports having borders and laws and shit. Among other quality hacks, here are some of the ways that Google Sheets can be used for keyword research. First, extracting a page's data. The import XML function has many uses and can be used to easily extract and import arbitrary data from web pages using XPath queries. There are a variety of uses for this functionality in terms of keyword research, including, but not limited to, extracting a title tag similarly to what was mentioned in the previous point about sitemaps, extracting meta descriptions, or extracting anchor text from an arbitrary web page. You can see the queries that you would use here for these 3 tasks. The process of using Google Sheets for data extraction and making URL requests is also discussed in more depth in this separate video guide on how to use Google Sheets to scrape email addresses from lists of URLs. Additionally, Google Sheets is useful as a keyword research and SEO tool because you can use it to make HTTP requests on your behalf through Google. When you use a function like import XML that makes an HTTP request to a web page, the request is not sent from your own computer, but rather it is sent from the Google server. To test and verify this, I made a test request to the URL here, and examining the server logs after this shows that the IP address is not my home IP, but rather it is 66.102.8.71, which you can look up to verify that that is a IP address owned by Google. And the user agent is also a custom user agent set by Google for the Google Docs API or the Google Docs HTTP requests as part of Google Apps scripts. There are a number of other tricks that involve Google Sheets that you can use, some of which are discussed in this post below, and some of which have been discussed elsewhere on this site. Number 3, the browser's developer console. There are a number of tricks that you can do with the developer console, whether that's in Firefox, Google Chrome, or some other browser. Similarly to Google Sheets, there are scripts that can be used for web scraping. For example, using a function such as a query selector or query selector all function from the developer console can easily be used to extract data such as all of the links on the page, all of the anchor text associated with them, or other arbitrary data. This is useful for quick and easy scraping for sites, which you can use to gather data about a site, its keywords, and other information that you can then analyze further. Another alternative is to use a plugin like Scraper, which can be used for basically the same thing. Number 4, D-tier guest post sites, also known as PBNs. Using garbage guest post link farms as a tool for keyword generation and keyword research is a gold mine, as described by my homeboy, Hash Brown. Also, if you're ever bored and looking for niches to compete in, crawling these shitty sites and pulling their anchor text is a great source of ideas. That's a quote from my homeboy Hash Brown in reply to a previous thread on identifying these kinds of link farms. Hell yeah. And more importantly than just the anchor text, you can also take these sites' actual URLs, the sites that are being linked to from these articles, and then analyze them further by using a tool like either Ahrefs Site Explorer and going to the organic keyword section, or some other method to extract additional data from those pages, such as the sitemap approach described above. You might ask, but aren't these sites fucking trash run by brain cells in Pakistan? And the answer to that is yes. These link farms are generally trash. However, what's useful to note about these link farms is that while these sites may be garbage that are being linked to, oftentimes those sites have still done extensive keyword research. So while they may be sitting on page 10 for their terms, and they might not be making any money, they might be bad at ranking and so on, they often have a lot of keyword data that can easily be scraped and extracted through whichever method of your choosing you would like to use. And then if you actually know what you're doing, you can use that data to actually rank for terms that are actually useful. This allows these guest post sites to be a useful mechanism or a useful tool for keyword research in many different niches. And that's true even if you are a completely white hat operation. You can use that for the keyword research and bring that into your project. Number 5, your WordPress or whatever spam folder. Similarly to the process we discussed with using guest post sites for keyword generation and keyword research, you can also use your WordPress spam filter or spam folder to find the kinds of sites that are trying to spam your site. And the same as those previous sites with the guest post link farms is that while the sites might be trash and they might not rank in many cases, or even the majority of cases, they often do have keywords that you can examine and extract and use for keyword generation or additional keyword research. And if you don't get enough spam on your site already, you can always do something like pay $5 to GSA blast your WordPress site so that 7,000 spam bots will follow those comments back to your site and submit like 800 spam comments every 5 minutes. Number 6, Bing, Yahoo, My Web Search, and other non-Google search engines. There are a variety of pieces of data that can be scraped directly from search engine result pages for the purpose of, among other processes, doing keyword research. These pieces of data include, but are not limited to, the number of results for a query, the list of pages ranking for a query, and the searches related to, or alternatively, the people also asked questions that are shown on the search result pages. However, trying to use Google search results for scraping is very resource intensive because of the quality and the amount of time that they've put into their spam filter, as described by Hash Brown in a separate post. As you can see, I have chosen Bing, Yahoo, and My Web Search for web scraping. Now you might say, oh my fucking god, what a noob. These are terrible. Why don't you use the big G, also known as Google? And the answer is that Google is hard to scrape. They're very good at detecting robots, and it's not worth the effort. These search engines are way easier for scraping. And you can find that in this Web 2.0 guide by Hash Brown. While it is easy to not even bother fucking trying to scrape search results, if you are trying to scrape Google, you might get frustrated and leave and rely entirely on external sources and tools like Ahrefs to gather your SERP data. It's actually substantially easier to do scraping at various levels of scale by looking at something like Bing, Yahoo, or My Web Search as your source for that data. And much of that data, even though it's a different search engine, will extrapolate or transfer correctly to making inferences about the Google search results, even if you don't care about those search engines independently. As for the process of scraping these search engines and the results, there are a number of different methods. Hash Brown has discussed using Scrapebox, and that's particularly useful for very massive bulk scraping. For scraping at a smaller scale of a few hundred or a few thousand keywords, you can even use Google Sheets relatively easily and effectively. There are several code snippets that we'll discuss below and here for scraping Bing search results, and these can easily be adjusted to scrape other search engines mentioned to gather data. Interestingly, since we're doing this in Google Sheets here using import XML, you can actually get a decent result trying to scrape Google with the import XML function, probably because the HTTP requests are actually being made from Google Sheets on your behalf. I have run into some challenges using it. It doesn't seem to always work perfectly, and Google's search results are also a little bit more difficult to write XPath queries for. Regardless, you can experiment with that more and get a decent result with Google using Google Sheets for scraping at a certain scale. Note that there are some edge cases with this kind of scraping that we're going to discuss in just a minute, where you might, for example, not see a searches related to box for that query, which will normally show an NA error, and you can wrap that in this helper function here if you want to have a blank cell instead. The first of the three things that we're going to discuss is how to scrape the number of results for a query. This piece of data is useful for evaluating how difficult a keyword is. In general, search results that have more results tend to be more competitive. There are some exceptions to this, where you might have something that has a lot of results, but none of them are very good, and so on. But as a general trend, this metric correlates reasonably well with keyword difficulty. What we need to do here is we have a parameter in our URL here for Bing or Google or Yahoo or whatever, which is generally going to be Q equals, and then it's going to be your search. And that search is going to be URL encoded. So you can see these formulas here, and what you're going to want to do is put your keyword in cell A2, then in cell B2, you'll use this text concatenation with the ampersand to encode your URL or your keyword onto that URL. And following that URL will take you directly to that search result page. Next, we can use something like the URL generated here and import XML to find and extract this match for this XPath query here. And you can see this is the class used to indicate the number of results that show up on that search result page. Finally, if you want to convert this from a string of text to a number, you can use this formula so that you can actually perform calculations on this result in your spreadsheet. Next, we can talk about scraping SERP results and position. This is similar to what you might have with something like SERP Book or another kind of rank tracking tool that you can easily emulate in a spreadsheet on your own. Now, what you're going to want to do is you can see these two formulas here, and these are actually relatively straightforward for Bing. And what you're going to do is use an XPath query to grab these lists of URLs and the lists of the links associated with them. Now, if you want to scrape past the first page, what you're going to likely want to do is have a set of XPath queries where you either append a variable to the URL to say show the top 100, so just the top 10, or to manually go through, or not manually, but to go through that series of pages with a set of multiple requests to Bing or Yahoo or wherever. You might also look into the transpose function if you need to try to format this into the right format for your project. Finally, let's talk about scraping the related searches box. You can see this formula here, and essentially what we are doing is grabbing these keywords at the bottom of the page and concatenating them and then transposing them and merging these all into one cell so that we have a comma-separated list of keyword suggestions. These three functions that we've discussed previously can also be written in something like Python or another kind of a language, which can, in some cases, help make these a little bit more readable if you want something where there aren't quite so many wrapper functions or helper functions. Number 7, your feels. Keyword research tools are fucking retarded. I mean, some of them are of excellent quality, but also these are still robots that are trying to classify an essentially infinite amount of data while also trying to take into account bullshit like bot traffic, multiple variations on the same keyword, incomplete data sets, and other bullshit. So you'll often get data that's either incomplete or misleading. So one example might be something like the keyword, what is the Antikythera mechanism, which has an estimated 544,000 monthly searches, according to Ahrefs, which would be over 500,000 monthly searches. However, in actuality, it has like 0 monthly searches, but the data is thrown off because there was a Google Doodle in 2017, and it got a ton of searches over a short period of time. So you can have things like that are overestimates. Then you can also have something that's an underestimate. So for example, a question that's very difficult to phrase, where many different people are using different phrasings, particularly long phrasings, so they're not clustered together correctly, even though many people are trying to solve that problem, they're not all using the same phrasings. So if you have a problem that you think a lot of people are searching for, or that you've been searching for, but there's no real good content on it, you can often do things where you can put together an article that has a few of the common phrasings that might not be exact matches, but they're pretty close. You mix in some LSI keywords, and you can bring in more traffic from these long tails than might be predicted by just looking at the raw number in a keyword research tool. If a search is something that looks like it's over promising, or you have something where it seems like it says there's nothing, but obviously people are going to be looking for that for whatever reason, don't be fucking retarded. Use your feels and do things that seem to make sense to you. Don't just blindly trust tools. Number 8, keeping in mind that same concept, one thing you can pull from is your browser history. Your browser has probably years worth of history, including searches. This data is particularly valuable because you probably know at least something about these topics and can put together some good content on them. Many of these topics are likely related to sites that you run and are already niche related. And the searches that you've conducted are, as mentioned a minute ago, also often underrepresented by keyword research tools because you might be making some queries that are very specific or difficult to phrase, where someone's looking for it, but the exact phrasing on that variation isn't in the keyword research tools due to the complexity of the query. These queries are also generally fairly easy to rank. Now, what you can do is try to extract all of this data through the following process to grab your complete search history. Now, you might ask, why don't you just fucking export your search history directly from your Google account? And the answer is because every time I've tried to do this, and I've tried multiple times over probably the last year or two, I just want to buy the best cheap handgun in Dubai and put it in my fucking mouth, because while you would think you'd be able to export your search history from Google, it seems like that's not the case. The page where you can download your Google data lists things like Google Drive or YouTube or all these even kind of obscure things you didn't even know that they even had data on or you've never even thought about. There doesn't seem to really be an option for your search history. If someone knows how to find that, then feel free to post that in the comments. Otherwise, it's a relatively easy process that you can follow here. First, you want to export your browser history. There are instructions for how to do this on Chrome and Firefox here. On Chrome, there seems to be no real built-in browser support for exporting your browser history, but you can do this relatively easily with this ghetto fucking plugin here. On Firefox, go to Library, then History, then Show All History, then Import and Backup, and then Backup. And you can export the browser history as a JSON file. I don't know about any other browsers that exist, although the process should be comparable. If you want to convert from JSON to another format, there are a number of approaches you can take here. There are tools like JSON to CSV or whatever that you can look for and use to convert. There are some limitations because JSON is designed to be used for storing fucking objects, which can have child attributes, whereas CSVs aren't. But this one that is linked here actually seems to work relatively well. There's also an extract URL from file tool linked here, although it can crash with very large files. What I ended up doing is running this short script from the Linux terminal, which you can copy paste into your terminal to extract the JSON URL values. You might also try something like a regular expression, but that's basically anarchy because you're trying to extract URLs with the regex, which is fucking impossible anarchy with infinite edge cases. Now, if you don't know, the way the query parameters work for most search engines, you're gonna have something like Q equals whatever, or for Yahoo, it's P equals whatever. And this is what your search actually is. So it's built into the URL. We don't actually need to get the metadata from Google because it's just built into the URLs in our search history. So to extract this, the easiest way that I found was just to copy paste this script that I've written here, which you can run from the Linux terminal. You could probably run this from Mac OS similarly, from like Bash or whatever. Windows probably has a comparable thing. If someone has done this on Windows, I guess post in the comments. It should be very similar, or you should be able to basically do the same thing. And what I ended up getting was 5,839 unique queries from my Google Chrome history. It seems that you can also basically skip this section about converting JSON to a list of URLs. There might be a few false positives, but it looks like I got only a few extra lines when doing that and just skipping over that step. So you could do that either way. There's also an alternate method that you could try here, but I found that it was a complete abomination, and Google Sheets would just have a stroke because you're trying to run like 45 fucking thousand rows with a custom formula because there's no URL decode function, despite there being a URL encode function, which is confusing, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, the result is that you'll get a list of all your searches. These are some of the things that I found, and you can see that some of these are things that are popping up where I actually have articles on the site already about these. And if you kind of segmented that or searched, you might be able to find a bunch of variation of things that you were actually looking for while writing this article that maybe aren't already covered in that article, or different similar tangential things, or even things you haven't written about that are worth discussing on your site. Overall, in conclusion, hell yeah. It's time to use these secret keyword research tools to make the best cheap money online. Regular keyword research tools are gay as fuck, If you are someone who uses regular keyword research tools, you are probably going to say something like bro job, choo choo, as you are probably a filthy fucking homosexual. Overall, if you want to do some high quality keyword research, then use these high quality secret keyword research tools. Or read other articles like this video guide to on-page SEO, or this video guide on literally every link building method. Alternatively, you can register an account to leave hate mail in the comments of this thread.